So I've been pondering the idea of how I want to kind of shape my day-to-day life to where I can really enjoy it, and help my people, help my friends and family and all that stuff. And kind of the idea of, if you're going through life and you want to have a productive life, stuff like that, you're gonna have to do stuff that you don't want to do. And in my case, I find stuff that's not instantly rewarding, or not fulfilling or productive, or kind of future focused. And stuff that's not in my routine. It's very hard for me to be motivated because it's hard for me to kind of have that willpower to do things that I don't want to do. And it kind of got me thinking that there's so many things in life that we don't want to do, but it's beneficial to do. I don't know why right now, but the idea of taxes just comes in my head, because taxes is one of those things that no one likes to do, except for the people who work for the government, or helps people with taxes, who make money off of other people who don't like taxes. And it's one of those areas where you don't necessarily want to do it, and it's not really rewarding, but at the end you could be saving thousands of dollars, and thousands of dollars will get you freedom somewhere else in your life. And it's kind of the idea is like, where does that motivation come from, for where in the moment it doesn't reward you, but in the future it does. And I kind of kept thinking about how the idea of discipline and how that's kind of been ingrained in my life, and how it's been affecting my life in the last little bit. So I think it's good to kind of get a baseline where I think the definition of discipline is, because it kind of helps shape the kind of my ideas and my feelings behind kind of the idea of discipline. So I think discipline, in my words, is having the motivation to do something, to complete a task, to work on something that isn't immediately rewarding or satisfying, but we do it because it helps us avoid a more negative future. So if we don't do it, it's going to have a worse impact on our lives, or so we think, than if we do it. So kind of the idea of, well, in the future it's going to suck for me if I don't do it, so I've got to do it now. And I think about that definition, I think about all the times I left my lab reports up to the last day, until the fear of not being able to submit it on time caused me to get my butt into gear and kind of focus on it. And I think when it comes to discipline and that kind of that idea of, doing something that you don't want to do, it's a struggle for me to picture it in that way. I find it very hard to have the drive to do something that I don't want to do. I find that hard to focus and all that stuff. So I would consider myself, in some respects, I have great discipline. I go to the gym all the time, I work out, I take care of myself with the food that I eat, and I do stuff like this that really helps me with my mental health. And in that respect, it's great. I have quote unquote discipline in those areas. But I also say that I don't have discipline in other areas. Like the last time I fully cleaned my room was, I don't know, months ago. And I periodically clean my room, but it's not to what we call necessarily a high standard of cleanliness. And I think about that, it's like, if you have an area that is clean, that is in order, it's a lot easier to focus. It's a lot easier to go to sleep. I don't have kind of the willpower to get through with that unless I take a full day off to do cleaning, stuff like that, which I haven't done. I'm a university student. So kind of that idea, I don't think I have discipline to get those things done periodically throughout a week. So my mind, when it comes to the idea of discipline, is like, well, I've got quote unquote discipline, what the general populace would say is discipline, but also other areas that isn't really discipline. I think that comes to the fact of, like, the definition that I think of is doing something you don't want to do because the future negative implications are greater than the present implications of doing it, of not wanting to do it. And I think about that, it's like, there's so many different definitions of what people, or so many different opinions of what is motivating to do, what motivates people, what people enjoy to do. There's so many people that enjoy cleaning. I am not one of them. And this is where my mind's like, I don't know if discipline is a great word to live by, a great idea to live by. I also think, building on that, kind of the thing that befuddles me a little bit with discipline is how it's kind of brought up in terms of parenting, parent to children and interactions like that. Because whenever I think about discipline, it's like, oh, this child's done bad, this parent's going to discipline them. Well, what does disciplining them mean in that context? Well, it means taking away stuff, means restricting them, means doing, essentially punishing them. There's an argument to be made that discipline in that respect is a punishment. Do we want, as adults, to live our lives through the punishments of our own mind? Doesn't make sense. And that's what kind of befuddles me, because when we talk about discipline, getting ahead in the workforce, stuff like that, we're essentially punishing ourselves. We're hurting ourselves in some way for some gain, sure. It's not all bad, but the idea of discipline is like, it's almost a sacrifice. You're sacrificing yourself for some reason. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. In my opinion, in my life, I wouldn't want to sacrifice stuff in the present for kind of a greater gain in the future. I don't think that really leads to fulfilling life, but that's besides the point of this talk. But we learn kind of this idea of discipline. It's like, it's a negative thing from when we're young, from when we get grounded, from when we get in trouble. And the other idea of discipline is, when you're at school, sit in your chairs, be quiet when the teacher's talking, stuff like that. There's a chain of command. And me wanting to be a teacher later on, I understand, but don't really like that idea, because it essentially puts you in this, as a student, into good behavior and bad behavior, and it's too black and white. That's what I think discipline can kind of run into. But just the way that we're taught by discipline, it's always in a negative connotation when we're younger. and it somehow turns into, when we get more autonomy and more freedom, more positive connotation. But it's still, instead of someone restricting something on us because we did something bad, we restrict ourselves because we either feel like, we need it, or it's to build our future. So it's a sacrifice in the present for future gain. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I don't like thinking about the negatives of fearing something to get something done. That doesn't sit right with me, because how can we have a fulfilling life if you fear life? If you fear your situation in your day, it doesn't make sense. And this is where I am trying to shift my brain from a disciplined mindset, thinking about discipline, to a motivation mindset, because they're almost, in my opinion, completely opposites of one another. Where discipline, you're fearing something. Motivation is you want the effort that you'll put in will give you a reward. You crave the reward versus you fear the failure. You fear the opposite. And there's a why my mind sticks to this so much, and why I want to change it into a motivation mindset, is you kind of go in the direction that you're focusing on. Whenever you learn how to drive a car, the common thing to be taught is, if there is ever something going on, you need to avoid it. You look in the direction of where to go, where you want to go, rather than the thing that you want to avoid. Because if you're going to look at the thing that you want to avoid, your mind's focused on that, and you're going to hit that thing. But if you focus on where you want to go, where you want to avoid, where you want to go to avoid, then you're going to avoid it. There's been a lot of research on that. I find that really, really interesting in a driving situation. But that's the same thing just in general with life. If you're focused on something that you're fearful of, that's going to come true more often. You're going to either be paralyzed by that fear, you're going to have less energy, less motivation because of that fear, or maybe you complete that task but you're going to get more burnt out because of that fear. When it comes to motivation, well, having motivation, seeking that reward, whatever it is, there's a clear path for that. Get this job done, then you reap this reward. And I think for a lot of things, that's super important for both productivity improvement and also in happiness. And I wish that people, parents, society would kind of reward motivation more. Kid gets in trouble, a common thing to do is to ground and take away stuff. And I think that's good in majority of cases. But I remember when I was younger, and I very much appreciated about this by my mom for doing this, is I remember getting grounded like 2 times. It's probably like a year apart, and both times the duration of when I was grounded for got reduced. It was essentially ended early because I was not complaining, because I was compliant with it, and because I was being so good, the days that I got reduced. And I just think that's so motivating. It's like, if you do well, the punishment will be less. Rather than, if I keep acting up, my punishment's going to be more. That could have been something. But that was never the case. And I think fondly about that idea, because that was I remember being so happy. It's like, yes, I did well, and this is my reward. What a great idea. So the difference between motivation and discipline is just the outlook on what you're looking at. So you're looking at the fear of not completing something, not fulfilling something, not doing something, or you're looking at the reward of getting past that task, overcoming that fear, stuff like that. And wherever you look, that's most likely what's going to happen. And I think about that, and that's how I want to live my life. I want to strive for motivation to do something rather than the fear. Because many times in my life I've feared about some outcome, rational or irrational, and I just get paralyzed. I don't want to get paralyzed. I want to thrive in this life. But there are some times you gotta do what you gotta do. That you gotta do your taxes. That's one constant in life. So there is a need for quote unquote discipline / motivation. So kind of my really only tip right now that's working in terms of discipline is to force discipline on myself. And I mean that in a way where I take away better options, so I'm forced to do that task. And I think about this with technology, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in the endless scroll of YouTube, Netflix, and social media, Instagram, where you don't get anything done in a day that you need to get done because, hey, look at this immediate gratification alternative. This looks pretty good to me. And what if they weren't there? Normally you'd get bored. Normally I would get bored. And because I got bored, it's like, okay, I gotta do something with my time. I'm bored, I gotta move around. And then you start doing the things that you want to, or that you need to get done. It's almost like there's a hierarchy of wants. Like, I want to do this task, or I want to complete this. And if you take away the things that are more rewarding but less productive, if you're not allowed to do those, then you're just going to go down the list until you hit that that task that you want to get done. And that's discipline. That's doing something you don't want to do. But it doesn't take willpower. And the less we rely on willpower, the more we can get out of our bad days, our days of less energy. Instead of doing it when we have lots of energy and lots of willpower, if we don't even need willpower, we can just get it done. So I think that's kind of my thought process when it comes to discipline. It's like, why don't we just automate it, Maybe for some people, Sundays, you're not going to do any work. You're going to do stuff around the house. Sabbath, what a great idea. Or it's a day, no technology. It's also a great idea. It really gets stuff done. So that's kind of where I am at with discipline. I want to turn discipline into motivation, but when it needs to be discipline, I want to automate my discipline. Because the more thinking I need to do about discipline, getting things done that require discipline, the less I'm going to do it. That's where I stand.